There's a fear among some Americans that if you get with an Indian, you'll have to live with their parents. So Dosto, today is the first podcast episode for Katie in USA, and my special guest is Singh in USA.
So in this podcast, we will talk about how difficult it is for many Indians and Americans to date outside culture and what you go through, and especially how you have made me half coconut. You know, coconut is a Gen Z term which many people might not be familiar with. So it is the idea of making me still brown from the outside, but maybe inside you've made me a little bit white because maybe the way I am speaking right now is different than before and a lot of changed. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely wasn't the goal by any means, but just, when we first started dating, you would say remove instead of take off, or you would say, like, play it by the ear instead of play it by ear. Just, like, little things that, like, stood out to me as, like, an American English speaker is, like, okay, like, this person, doesn't speak the same kind of English as I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This person comes from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But now, like, more and more I catch you saying things like how I say them. And so it actually makes me kind of sad because I'm like, well, like, I like you to be you and special and different. But I mean, you're you and special and different beyond just, being from India, of course. So.
I mean, it's a learning experience. I'm not changing myself intentionally. I mean, I'm just trying to fit in. Like, people say that, oh, if you're changing your accent, that means you're leaving your Indian culture behind. I'm just trying to fit in the society. I can definitely say that, for example, I used to call this wall clock, I used to call it watch too.
Yeah, and I just got really confused because you were like, oh, like, the watch is broken, and so I thought it was the Apple Watch. And then I saw you fixing that, and I was like, what? Like, the clock?
Yeah.
So that's just one of the many things that I picked up on that are different.
Absolutely. So now let's talk about the data. Friends around me, I don't have a serious data about it, but friends around me who are Indian. Now, what does Indian mean? You taught me as well.
Yeah, so it's funny. I feel like in America, at least, and probably other countries too, I have to specify when I say, like, oh, my fiance is Indian. They'll be like, oh, like, Indian American, and it's like, no, Indian, like, he is from India, because there's so many Indian Americans here now. So yeah, I have to be like, he's Indian, like, he is legit, like, he came from there, he is from Punjab, he is, like, not saying the other ones aren't legit, I'm just saying, you know what I mean, he's Indian.
Absolutely. So friends around me, most of them are dating, at least around me, not outside the culture. Plus the data proves that majority of the people who are in the US, they, let's say, get H-1B visa, and they still choose to get married to a person from India and get married in India, bring her to the US. And that's a significant data around me, and also matrimonial sites is an evidence. So, like, how difficult it is for a person of your background to date someone outside culture. Like, for example, for friends who are maybe Indian for me, it's kind of difficult to convince them, but how it is for you?
So you're asking me, is it, it's just funny you say that. So you're basically saying that most of your friends are either dating or partnered with, or seem to only really think they have a chance at dating someone who's from India, right? That's what you're saying. So, like, for me, it's funny. I've noticed that, like, a lot of my friends are actually with immigrants. So I definitely don't think that was intentional. I just think that a lot of my friends, even though they're, like, white American, they're just really interested in other cultures. And actually, I think both the ones I know who are married to immigrants, they met them through teaching English, and I teach English. So I think it's just this common interest in language and culture that kind of brings them together. So yeah, it's definitely the opposite in my experience. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't some challenges, at least, like, for me, sometimes it can be a little, like, difficult because, like, we'll be watching a movie and they'll make a reference to something and you won't understand it.
Half of the movies I don't understand. Like the accent, the new words, I have to keep learning. Even though dating for 3 years, I feel like every time we watch a movie, there's no time we watch a movie and I haven't asked you a question.
Yeah. So, that can be a little difficult sometimes. And then I also just kind of felt like, I mean, if you don't mind my saying, like, it was definitely a little bit harder for like my family to get to know you and just kind of chat with you because you don't have a lot of like common, I guess, not only interests, but like, again, the same idea of like cultural references. Or we actually in like social science call them like cultural schemata.
Yeah.
You know, you can't talk to them about Bahubali and they can't talk to you about football. And so it's like there's not a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
But they still love you so much and they could see what a great person you are. And honestly, it's not that big of a deal to me. Because they're trying and you're trying, and so it's fine.
I remember the first meetup. Many people commented said it was very awkward meetup with your family, and
Oh.
and if you look up like Indian family meets American Indian boyfriend meets American family. Many people watch that video. If you look up on YouTube, and they will be like, "Oh, it's awkward, it's so cringy, and all that."
I mean, I think part of that too is like my family has never been on YouTube before, so like I think that was like a big part of it too. But I also just think not talking about myself, talking about people in general, or I guess at least like Americans who don't come from immigrant backgrounds or who don't interact much outside their cultures. I think the main thing is just kind of assuming you don't have a lot in common, and that's why. I mean, I'd like to think that a lot of people, if they were approached by someone from a different culture, they would consider dating them. But I don't feel like, to be honest, a lot of people even consider that as an option because they're just like, I don't know anything about this person's culture. Like, again, I don't have these same cultural reference points.
Main goal of this podcast is culture. So talking about the culture, like how difficult and what's the stereotype of Americans for Indians? How difficult it is for them to think about dating an Indian. I really want to put that out because like stats and dating apps, at least for my data, like when you swipe right or how many times you are swipe right as well, it shows that it is not as easy as you might think like. So what is the stereotype that maybe some American girls might have, irrespective of race? Like you can talk about all the Americans, white Americans, black Americans, Asian Americans, what they have.
Okay, I don't think I can really speak for like every girl in America, no matter what. I can just talk about, I guess, from myself and my own perspective. And I should say, first of all, like, there were a fair number of Indian Americans in my school growing up. And I was friends with a lot of them. So I think that, also probably influenced me to being more open. But I think it's obvious, like, on the TV shows, like on Big Bang Theory and, shows like that. It's like the Indian's a stereotype of this, like, very geeky dude, this very, like, nerdy dude. All he cares about is math and science and studying, and that's pretty much it. I mean, that's the stereotype, which is bad, but I guess out of all stereotypes, it's not the worst, I don't feel like people necessarily stereotyped Indians as being, like sexist or, things like that. But just, yeah, mostly like nerdy, geeky.
Yeah. Being an Indian in America, I have faced that. I don't think it's just a stereotype. I think our abilities to like connect with someone's culture is easier and difficult at the same time. Like I can, easily connect and ask questions, but it can be at the same time annoying to the other person. They might not have the patience to, have room for change in order to, translate into my culture and, them teaching me about the culture. So it's very, very difficult, and not everyone has patience like you have, and to be open-minded. So that's also very difficult. Some people, like, let's say they want to go for a Taylor Swift concert, and then when I came to the US, I was totally not into her. And I would be like, no, I don't think I can handle a girl who wants to go to Taylor Swift concert. And maybe if I can, maybe she would be like, oh, let's go to Taylor Swift concert every year. Maybe, I don't know, like it can be both ways. Maybe she thinks my energy is not matching for the concert. There could be difficult requirements.
So, I mean, that's another like cultural schemata. Like, you didn't grow up listening to Taylor Swift. I mean, you have much more appreciation for her now than I ever did. But typically, right, you would be like, why do I care about her? And then someone like me would be like, oh, she's, iconic. She was the voice of my childhood, um, so, I mean, you've been very patient with me too when I try to ask about things about India, ask about Hindi and Punjabi, ask about Bollywood. I love to hear all the Bollywood chai, you know? But yeah, a lot of people don't have that patience because they're not used to it and things like they just seem obvious to them. So it seems like annoying, like it's like a little kid or someone, asking them a bunch of questions and then they just get kind of annoyed, which is really sad, you know?
True, I agree. It's not just that Americans don't want to date maybe Indians at some point. It's also about the burden of we as Indians, we believe in marriage is between two families. And you believe in marriage is only between two people. I don't even have to take permission from your dad to propose you. So it's completely different. In India, even Bollywood actors take permission from the actors' parents. I see that in
Really?
many, yeah. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
completely different culture. Like we have to make sure that our parents are willing for it. They have to know that they are getting into a culture where two families might not be connected at all, and it's unimaginable. The two families might not get to go through Indian traditions properly. So that is also impossible for many Indian families to tolerate. What about for Americans?
I mean, yeah, I remember talking with some of my coworkers, and one of my coworkers was going to get married, and she was kind of worried because her parents hadn't met her fiance's parents, and she didn't think they would get along. And we were like, oh, they'll just see each other at the wedding. That's it. I mean, otherwise, it doesn't really matter, you know? And then that made me
Wow.
think of you, where it's just like, yeah, I mean, sometimes they're friends, but again, it really doesn't matter. They don't see each other that much because you celebrate holidays. Usually if two people are married and both families celebrate holidays, they'll go to one house for, maybe Thanksgiving and then the other house for Christmas. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not really ever all together except for the wedding and then I guess like if a baby's born or something. But yeah, I mean that's it.
Insane. Like you just talk. There's a possibility that two families might be meeting on the wedding day.
Yeah. I remember
Oh,
my dad didn't meet your aunt and uncle till like
like last year.
last year,
Yeah.
and he still hasn't met Nani.
No, but
Yeah.
my nanny hasn't even met your dad yet. Like
Yeah.
it's just insane, unbelievable to sometimes think about from Indian culture. It's extremely difficult because, for example, like there is a big fear in our hearts. For example, I want to tell you, right? We as Indians, we are always there to support our parents. For example, if let's say I marry you one day, and then let's say all the
Wait,
assets.
if you marry me?
Yeah, obviously. No, obviously. So let's say we are married now. Now, like there's one fear also in Indians' mind. Let's say I have a family member. They need some financial support. I'll be sending financial support to that family member. Now, in that case, there is a possibility the partner will be like, "Oh, you're married and the assets are combined. Who are you to support your parents now and or maybe your family member, because that's not part of culture in the US. You don't support your cousins for financially as much as Indians do. You're not as available to your family to just go next week to support them. That's a huge culturally difficult thing for Indians to achieve after marrying Americans.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think too, like, Americans don't always combine their finances, though.
True, but like they do question. I've seen many relationships in which like a partner can question, like, oh, I you helped your cousin, like, why do that? Like, do you think your cousin will like not cousin, like let's not give cousin example, but like I think I have seen many families like their partner can question, oh, you help your let's say some far relative, and like why are you doing that? Like why you are like going back to India for your far relative's demise or something like that. No, not demise. Okay, let's say some event. What happened?
Demise?
Or some event.
Like what? Like, what are you talking
I'm
about?
just giving examples. Let's say there is a special event for your family member and you need
Okay.
to be there financially, emotionally, and you guys are not as available for your family members emotionally, financially, and you might question. So that's a fear also in Indians' mind before dating an American, if they will be open to adjusting to that.
Well, I mean, you can't always assume that that's how people are going to be. And, like, I think also, I guess something I didn't talk about is I think there's a fear among some Americans that if you get with an Indian, you'll have to live with their parents and they don't
Oh,
want to live and like take care of their in-laws. You know, there are actually so many jokes in American culture about like, oh, my horrible in-laws, my horrible, you know. So yeah, I mean,
that's,
but again, like that's not the situation with you. So, you know,
yeah.
like I shouldn't just assume, you know, just because you're Indian, right? Everybody's situation is different. I know someone who's dating an Indian who doesn't have a good relationship with his parents. So, I mean, you never know what people's situations are.
True.
So,
Yeah. I mean, that's a big fear. Like, how open you think Americans are if their family member is, maybe trying to, stay with them for a few months in America.
oh, I think I'd like to think a few months is fine. I think it's more just like staying forever. Because even like most people in America don't really want their own parents to stay forever.
Yeah, like,
Like not anyone's parents, not just their partner's parents, anyone's parents. Like they're just very, independent, want to do their own thing.
That's so true. Yeah.
And that I'm sure that seems very selfish from an Indian perspective, right?
True.
Yeah.
It's
Especially if like you have kids
yeah.
of your own, you have to take care of the kids and you have to take care of your parents. That's just like a lot, right?
True, but like here, like in Indians think that if they have a kid, like they think that, oh, if their parent is coming, they will have so much help. But here, even after having a baby, Americans still want to be by themselves, and I'm totally shocked by that data. But Indians always be like, oh, my parents are coming to take care of my kid. It's so amazing.
Well, I think I would say that I've definitely heard of a lot of cases if, let's say we had a baby, if my dad lived nearby, I think he would definitely want to help take care of the baby, but definitely not move in. There's just like Americans in general, in every way, want more space. Like, for instance, Indians can be like this close, like walking around or on the bus, or, whereas Americans are like, move away from me, like, give me more space. And it's the same thing with living space. It's like, I think most Americans want their relatives to live nearby so they can visit often, but they don't want them to actually live in the house.
Yeah, it's very disheartening. I see that, like, let's say if Katie brings out the topic of space, or in an American brings out a topic of space, it's sometimes disheartening because, for Indian, they're like always about collectivism. And I've seen like, families, my family or many families, like all sometimes get heartbroken because of that. Yeah. Can you share some of the like non-negotiable items that are in the list of Americans that Indians should know of? And I can share on the perspective of Indians as well.
Oh, again, lots of pressure to speak for all Americans. um, I mean, honestly, that's kind of, I think one of the main ones is like, are your
Exactly.
parents gonna live here? Because, like, again, we don't really like to have to take care of our own parents, or at least have them live with us. So having, like, someone else's parents is just, like, a lot.
And I personally think what is like non-negotiable if I am like dating someone outside culture is like not having like an Indian traditional wedding and like not having, maybe it could be like not having to see my parents at least sometimes with you in India, visiting India.
Oh, well, I
And
mean,
like
that's really
that's
shitty if they wouldn't be willing to go to India sometimes to be with your family. I mean, that's really shitty.
true, true,
Yeah.
but that is non-negotiable, and other things that are negotiable depends on Indian to Indian, and all like I mean I cannot say on behalf of all Indians.
I will say another one is willingness to eat food that doesn't have as much masala as they're used to.
True. Oh my God. For me, chaat masala is like every time I have to add.
No, you become more coconutty, and so
Yeah.
you don't actually add it all the
In
time.
the
You
beginning.
used to, yeah,
Yeah.
you
In the
used to.
in the beginning, my favorite food, whatever you make, was like accompanied by chaat masala.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of Americans really like, especially like Punjabi food, like butter chicken and stuff. But we really like variety. There was this, I remember you were like laughing because when we first moved in, I was like, okay, like, we're gonna have, like, I'm gonna make an East Asian style dish. And you said, oh no, why don't we have quesadillas? And I'm like, we just had tacos. We can't have Mexican food 2 nights in a
And
row.
same, if we had Indian food today, you cannot have it tomorrow. Like,
Yeah, we
yeah,
have to have variety. And
insane.
I remember your response was, well, when I was growing up, I ate Indian food every day. So, like, I mean, some Americans aren't like this. Some Americans will just eat the same, like, bland white people food all the time. But I think Americans like me, who grew up in a little bit more urban areas, were used to all these different kinds of cuisines. And even though my mom, she was white, but she would make, try to make tacos one night and then, like a Japanese chicken the next night. And that, she would try to mix it up, pasta the next night. So I guess I didn't realize that that's not really a thing everywhere. And when I studied abroad too, it was like, okay, I'm getting really tired of this
Yeah.
food. It's the same, but over and over. Although Indian is great because India has so much variety. Because
But
like,
still, you get bored with it.
yeah, sometimes. Like I didn't really want any for like a week after, at
Coming
least
back
a
home,
week after
yeah.
I came back,
Yeah.
at least, because I was just like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that was all for the culture shock. Obviously, every Indian is different. Every American is different. You may have like you may have a list of 10 items you want. 7, maybe like, okay, 3 non-negotiable. And you cannot always meet 10 on 10.
Wait, can
Haha.
I share 2 more?
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 more. So 2 more non-negotiables, at least for me, which didn't matter with you, but would be.
Farts.
I know I've clearly negotiated too much on that. It would be not wanting to have fun before getting married, because I assume it's not as intense as it used to be in India, but like in India, right, it used to be a lot more intense that like you couldn't do stuff before you get married. And then along with that, like not being willing to move in before getting married, because I just feel, and I think a lot of Americans feel like living together is a good way to judge would you be compatible as a couple if you were married. And so it's a good, step leading into that. So I just can't even imagine, just going straight into marrying someone and moving in. Because, like, what if, you're totally incompatible? What if I want it to be really clean and you don't care about being clean? Things like that. And it's just like, a nightmare.
True.
So I know, again, that in India, that's not really common, right?
Absolutely
But
right. Yeah, absolutely right. I totally agree. Like these are like, few non-negotiables. Like I mean, I never thought about it. For me, it was very easy to get permission. Obviously, and maybe I didn't even take permission. But
I mean, I don't think so. Did you?
I mean, did take maybe. I just informed.
Really?
It was informed, polite
Oh.
position.
Well, yeah. I
permission.
mean, I informed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's bad a little bit. I've become a little bit coconutty. I mean, it's good or bad. Depends on how you say it. But yeah, obviously, like you cannot meet all the 10 requirements you have. Like it's like software engineering. You make some requirements, you cannot meet all, and you always have to, what is the term? Negotiate.
Negotiate.
Yeah.
I guess just to say too, like another kind of non-negotiable is like we have to have like a common language. Like we have to at least like be able to understand each other.
True.
Because I will just say that like I was briefly maybe starting a relationship with someone and they didn't speak English very well, and like I was okay at, like we kind of had one common language but neither of us really spoke it that well. That was just like
Yeah,
communication's hard enough even if you already speak the same language, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you're an Indian and you want to date an American, I mean, unless that American like knows your language, you should honestly probably have some level of English. Otherwise
True.
it's just going to be really difficult.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's all for today. Comment down what topics you would like next week. I mean, we can do probably one podcast a week. Any topic you like, we would love to comment on. And thank you so much for watching.
Bye.
Bye.